and it will also be archived on the Healthy Schools Campaign's website by the end of this week. And also at the end of the webinar, if you could take a minute to complete a quick survey about the webinar, we would really appreciate it. And so at the very end of this webinar, we're saving 15 minutes for questions and answers, but feel free to ask your questions at any time throughout the webinar. You can do that by typing a question into the questions box, which is located on your control panel, and just click on the send button. Send those questions in at any time. We'll collect them, and then we'll present them to our speakers in the last 15 minutes of the webinar. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to my colleague, Mark Bishop, who is going to be providing us with a brief introduction to today's webinar.
Thank you so much, Alex. My name is Mark Bishop. I'm Vice President of Communications and Policy at Healthy Schools Campaign. Healthy Schools Campaign, we are a not-for-profit. We work on the common sense notion that a healthy child is going to be a more successful student. And we work on the intersection of health, environment, and how those are impacted in the school, in the school setting. So before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about what we're going to be hearing today, and a little bit about an overview of why Farm to School and why this is so important to us. First of all, our speakers today, I'm very excited about them. Anupama Yoshi, Cesar Devalina, and Len Neeb. You're going to hear a very from the first speaker, we're going to have a broad overview of Farm to School programs, where they're going nationally, what the trends are, and more information about the details of what a program is. Then from Cesar, you're going to hear from a produce distributor, someone who's really on the front lines engaging with local farms and getting the local produce into schools. And you're going to hear about all the challenges, but also all the opportunities of doing that. Finally, you're going to hear Len Neeb from Miller Poultry, who's going to talk about an innovative and a unique program that's going on in Chicago, trying to get Chicago tied into more local, more sustainable, more ethically raised protein, specifically the chicken that they are serving now in Chicago. So why do we at Healthy Schools Campaign care about Farm to School? I like to highlight 4 quick points. And the first one goes back to improving quality. By connecting schools to local farms, we're looking at having a higher quality food that's going to be more palatable, and food that's going to be enjoyable for students to eat. It's going to be more nourishing. Second is connecting students to their food. What we have learned, both professionally, what we have learned through the research, what we've learned as parents, is that if children know and understand where their food comes from, they are going to be better able to make decisions that are going to be helpful for their long-term lives. Third, education. Farm to School are tremendous opportunities, again, connecting students to their food systems, having them understand where food comes from, and it becomes powerful messaging around nutrition, around health, around environment, and around economics. So it's a powerful educational platform. We can't forget about issues around local economy, because there are tremendous stories about how we want to be engaging and keeping our dollars local, and we really want to create opportunities for local farms to grow and to thrive, and for our communities to thrive with them. And finally, improving the food system. Cesar is going to go and tell some interesting stories, I believe. One of them is going to be talking about how a local potato farmer that he's working with is able to start shifting his products away from commodity purchases and move them towards growing potatoes that are meant for a consumer marketplace. And that means shifting our agricultural resources from commodities and biofuels and potato processing, or French fry processors, to potatoes that are going to be meant for the end users, that are more wholesome, healthier, fresher, but also that shifts us towards a less processed food system. So having said that, I'm excited to get started. I'm going to introduce our first speaker, but before I do, I am going to ask a quick question, because we want to know a little bit about who is out there. So I have a very basic question that I'm going to ask you all. The question is, who are you? Food service worker, school nurse, teacher, parent, other. Please take a moment to answer. In the meantime, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Anupama Yoshi. She's the executive director and co-founder of the National Farm to School Network. Ms. Yoshi is a recognized leader of in the field of farm to school programs which connects local farms with schools to improve student nutrition and markets for farmers. Ms. Yoshi has over 15 years of experience working on nutrition, agriculture, and food system issues in various countries around the world. She has worked with the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations and the Pesticide Action Network. She serves on the board of Food Corp and is a past board member of the Community Alliance with Family Farmers based in Davis, California. She's also the co-author of the book titled Food Justice. And I would also like to say in the school food world, Anupama is a rock star, and we just consider her Anupama by a single name. There are not that many of them out there. So at the end, let me close the poll. Close. And let me see what we have. One of these days, share. It looks like we have 70% of you are other. But the rest are food service workers, school nurses, teachers, parents. We're going to get these categories right one day. Well, thank you for letting us know who you are. And having said that, I am going to say, Anupama, will you like to take over?
Sure. Thank you so much, Mark, and good afternoon, everybody, or good morning if you're in the Pacific Zone. I'd like to thank the Healthy Schools campaign for this opportunity. My goal for today's presentation is to simplify and define Farm to School for all of you, to highlight what the National Farm to School Network does and what services it provides to people across the country that are working on or working towards implementing Farm to School programs, and why Farm to School is a strategy you should consider. What are the major impacts that we know of, as well as Mark has very well put already, how does Farm to School fit into the broader discourse about healthier school food environments overall and local and regional food systems and support for the local economy? So with that, let's get started. Next slide, please. Let's start by defining Farm to School. We at the National Farm to School Network believe that at its core, Farm to School is a model that incorporates activities in the school that connect the cafeteria to the classroom and to the community at large by using local, regional, and healthy foods. We believe that these connections positively influence the school food environment in ways that support the health and well-being of our children, but they also support local farmers, local agriculture, and the local economy and the environment, since you're not shipping foods across the country. Next slide, please. So this is a not-so-healthy school lunch tray that I wanted to portray. And next slide is what a Farm to School lunch tray might look like. This is an example from Portland Public Schools, where, as you can see, there are many, many different local products that are featured on this menu on a single day. This is happening this is a picture from Portland Public Schools, but this is happening across the country, where not just fruits and vegetables, but meats, as you'll hear from our chicken folks today in Chicago, but all kinds of products that are grown or produced in the local and regional area are and can be featured in the cafeteria options. Next. What this means really is that we are seeing happier kids. Next slide, please. We are also seeing happier and motivated kitchen staff. Next slide, please. And this is important because I think food service staff really have a big role to play in terms of contributing to healthier children. We are seeing that farmers are really taking the initiative to be delivering local products, and this is a single farmer that's delivering to a school, but farmers can be delivering to schools or supplying to schools in a variety of ways through existing distributors, through existing food service companies as well. So it really depends on the scale of the school district that you're working with. Next slide, please. Farm to School also includes initiatives such as Farmer in the Classroom. Next. You could also have chefs in the classroom that are talking about different varieties of foods or what you could do with different kinds of foods. Next. Farm to School also includes cooking classes for kids or cooking demonstrations for kids. We believe that really getting kids to handle food, to really have that sensory experience with food is important, because that's really what sticks in their mind. and they'll take that, in their adult life where they have to make choices. They will remember these experiences that they have through farm to school programs. Next slide. We also believe that school gardens is a great way of engaging kids in growing anything. We know that kids will eat anything that they grow, and they will be so proud of it that they'll be pushing it to their friends as well. So gardens are an excellent way of getting kids out in the open, in fresh air, but also engaging them in the production of food. Next. We also see that with farm-to-school programs, there's often a lot of parent involvement that happens, by way of serving different kinds of foods. This is a taste that's actually from Illinois, from a program in Illinois, picture from Illinois. Next, parents can also get involved in initiatives such as waste management, environmental programs, and such that are, additional things that teachers may not have time to do. But this is all part of farm to school, and that's how we define farm to school. Next slide. What the National Farm to School Network does is it's a collaborative of organizations across the country that are promoting and working on farm to school efforts across the country. We have been in operation since 2005 and went through a one-year planning process before we got set up to really understand what the needs of farm to school programs across the country are. We have a regional structure. We have 8 regional lead agencies. As you can see, the country is kind of divided into 8 regions. Each region has a lead agency that is associated with the network, and then each state has a state farm to school lead person that is assigned to the National Farm to School Network as well. What this provides us really is a good network of people all across the country that have the capacity to assist people, to train people, to provide information resources to people who want to be engaged in farm-to-school type activities. Next, our core priority areas are networking, media and marketing, information services, technical assistance and trainings, policy and research and evaluation. And we work in these functional areas to support farm-to-school efforts at the local, at the state, at the regional, and at the national level. Next, we have a couple of resources that I wanted to highlight for you. We have on our website, farmtoschool.org, we have a button that says Join Our Network. If you click on that and submit your information, you'll be added to our mailing list. And what that means is we have a monthly e-newsletter that goes out that has lots of information about farm to school, funding opportunities, events that are coming up. So it's just a good way of keeping in touch with what's happening and also stories about what's happening across the country. We also have a webinar series that happens the second Tuesday of every month at 1 p.m. Eastern. It's called Lunch Bites, and it's open to folks. You can sign up on the website as well for webinars. We also have a lot of information resources that the network has created over the last couple of years that are available on our website. It is the go-to place for any kind of farm-to-school information. So if you would like additional information, go to the website and find out whatever it is that you're looking for. We have evaluation toolkits that we've created. We have policy documents and recommendations that we've created that are available. So it's really for you to be going in and figuring out what you need from the website. You can also send us an email with additional questions or specific clarification that you need on anything. And we typically get about 300, 400 inquiries every quarter on a regular basis, and we do answer them. So just wanted to let you know that. Next slide. And as a network, we believe that networking is really important for us at all levels. We are organizing a national Farm to Cafeteria conference, which will include not just K-12 and preschools that we work with, but also other institutions like Farm to College, Farm to Hospitals, Farm to Prisons, and other allied institutions that are interested in this Farm to movement. They will be coming to this conference. It's a great chance for folks to learn, to share information about their own projects. So I hope you will join us. It is in Burlington, Vermont, August 2nd to the 5th, and additional information is available on our website, farmtoschool.org, as well as farmtocafeteriaconference.org, if you'd like that. Next. One of the other things that I'm really excited about with the network's work is that we are expanding into the early care preschool age, so the 0 to 5 year age outside of K-12, because we believe that there is an enormous potential to positively influence children's diets and physical activity at these institutions. We believe that even starting at even an earlier age from 0 to 5 is really important, and there's recent research that backs that up, that really what kids eat in this 0 to 5 year age is what their health potential is going to be in adult life. So we really believe that this is an important area of work that we want to explore further, and we are getting started on that this year. Next. I also wanted to mention that USDA also has a farm to school team and has recently launched something called the Know Your Farmer, Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food Compass, which is an interactive tool that you can use to find out information about farm to school programs that USDA has supported, as well as other local food systems programs that USDA has supported. So a lot of fabulous action, next slide, is happening across the country, and many, many people have been contributing to it. But really, at its core, the farm to school approach is about trying to change school lunch, as the state is trying to do, or school menus, but also supporting local food and farming systems. Next. And we know that farm to school works because we've seen a big, tremendous growth in the movement. As you can see through this graph, we were just at 5 states in 1997. Now we're at 50 states, in all 50 states and DC, implementing farm to school activities, and from 6 programs in 1997 to about 2,500 programs across the country, and more growing. Next slide, please. So I wanted to touch upon a couple of impacts that farm to school has been documented to have. Food service impacts. We know we're going to hear some from Chicago, but I wanted to give you a couple of other examples here. Minnesota just released some findings from their statewide survey where they say that 68% of the kids in Minnesota are participating in a farm to school program. That accounts to about 500,000 children in the state that are participating and being touched by this wonderful program, with about 1.3 million of foods grown from the local and regional area purchased in the last year. Next, we also see food service impacts where there's increase in school meal participation. We talked about high staff morale and motivation, and if the meals are healthier and tastier, there's also increase in food service revenue because more kids are eating. Next. We also see student impacts, the most logical ones being gains in knowledge and attitudes about local food, but that kids are also increasing their consumption of these kinds of foods that are being served and increasing their consumption of fruits and vegetables by up to about 1.3 servings per day, which is really significant in terms of the fact that school lunch is one of the major meals that many kids, or one of the only meals that many kids eat. Next, we also see that farmers are benefiting from this. Next, and very importantly, we are also seeing that there are economic impacts. There was a study that was done in Portland, which I'm highlighting here, where for every dollar that was spent in these school districts, 86 cents, an additional 86 cents was being spent in the Oregon economy. And similarly, the job creation, where for every 2 jobs that were created in the school system as a part of farm to school, that there were an additional 0.43 jobs that were created in the local area. And so that is significant. This is a good argument to make, especially in this climate where economy and job creation is at the top of everybody's mind. Next slide. And these efforts have been supported by policies both at the local level, but also at the state level. Here's a link to state policies that are supportive of farm to school. We have a compilation of that on our website. You can take a look. And then there's also federal policies out there with child nutrition reauthorization in 2010 and the upcoming Farm Bill, where there's potential for supporting farm to school. Within CNR in 2010, we were able to establish something called a Farm to School Competitive Grant Program, which we are anticipating the launch of it in spring 2012. So stay tuned on this link, which is a USDA website link, for additional information on the grant program. The grant program will provide funds for school districts to be participating in Farm to School programs, and we are looking forward to the launch of that grant so that many, many more programs can be set on the ground. Next slide. So with that, I'm going to end my presentation here. My contact information is here as well as our website. I would be happy to take questions as we go along. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much. Before I continue, I'm just going to say real quickly, we will be archiving this on our website, so you will be able to view this or share this webinar at a later date along with copies of all of the slides. So if you're interested, they will be available later this week. So before I get to the next speaker, let me ask you just one quick question. Of the people on this webinar, how many of you have a Farm to School program? We'd love to hear that. So, and having said that, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, who is Cesar Devolina from Cristina Foods. Now, Cristina Foods is a wholesale food service distributor located in Chicago, Illinois. They've been in business since 1989 and have recently located its operations to the first LEED certified platinum food distribution facility in the country, which is located in Chicago's Old Stockyard neighborhood. The company founder and president, Cesar Devolina, who will be speaking shortly, has a long history in food system, with his family owning a 6-unit family-owned Mexican restaurant chain in Chicago. Taking the knowledge and experience that he gained in the restaurant business, Cesar decided to go on his own, focusing on distribution and education and other institutional end users. Cristina Foods has served the Chicago Public Schools since 1990, but most importantly, and for our purposes here, for the past 4 years, Cesar has been instrumental in helping Chicago move to a local procurement strategy, and he has been networking with local farmers as well as identifying key strategies for distribution to a school program that serves more than 400,000 meals every day and 76 million meals on a yearly basis. So let me close our poll, and we will share. And we will say 53% of our speakers say, no, we do not have a farm to school, 8% in progress, 24 say yes. So like always, there is lots of opportunities out here. Okay, well, thank you so much. And now let's go on to Cesar. So Cesar, please take the stage.
Thank you, Mark. First of all, I just want to thank all the folks at the Healthy Schools campaign for inviting me to come on board. And basically what I'm hoping to do today for all the attendees is just share some of my experiences as a produce distributor to Chicago Public Schools, which, as Mark had mentioned, is it's the largest privatized school lunch program in the country, currently ran by the folks at Chartwell Thompson Hospitality. Now, for us, several years ago, in 2008, Chartwell Thompson took the initiative whereby they wanted to have more inclusion of locally procured produce in the school lunchrooms. So we were called upon by the folks at Chartwell Thompson to devise a strategy and come up with a network of local farmers whereby, given the capacity and the good handling practices and so forth and fulfilling certain criteria, that we could bring those commodities from the farm to the school. And some of the obvious challenges were, first of all, seeking out those types of farmers. And first and foremost, we had to establish a criteria for what is considered local. And if we can go to the next slide. So what we agreed upon is to be considered local was essentially, of course, being in Chicago, we're in the state of Illinois. And we said, well, any farm located in the state of Illinois proper, as well as the surrounding states, would be considered local for the purposes of this initiative with the Chicago Public Schools. So once we established that as our radius, we needed to establish a criteria. So what we did was, in conjunction with the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Agricultural Marketing Service, along with the folks at familyfarm.org, which is a local organization that brings local farms together with end users and distributors such as us.
Cesar, would you kindly speak up a little bit?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Yes. So we're working with the folks from familyfarm.org as well, which is I don't know if everybody heard me, a local organization that assists in bringing farmers together with end users to fulfill local procurement programs. So once we were able to identify several farmers that on the surface had capacity to fulfill, such capacity that would be needed in the Chicago Public Schools, having to serve 480,000 kids a day, we went out to these farms, visited the farms, researched them that they had good, what we call good agricultural practices, which namely we look for USDA GAP certification, as it's known in the industry. Whether access to transportation was needed, either our own transportation or utilizing their common carriers. And of course, all the products going into the school lunchrooms, we wanted to make sure that grading certificates would accompany these shipments, for quality and grade. We can go to the next slide. So now we are moving along. The next function would be to establish what we call the market basket. And being in here, in the upper Midwest, as you may imagine, the growing season is very short. Seasonality is very short, so we had to be very selective and diligent in terms of selecting the commodities that would best fit both availability and the practical uses in the Chicago Public Schools kitchens. And then accordingly, we would menu those commodities according to the seasonality and availability. And then once we had that, we would go out and secure these commodities and promote the local initiative to the Chicago Public School students. And one of the things that we did last year, back in October, is we took a group of Chicago Public School students on a field trip to an apple orchard in Sparta, Michigan, which is just north of Grand Rapids. And the idea being is, although there was only about 30 kids participating, which is obviously a very minute percentage of the total population, but the idea was to get them educated on just how it is, how their food arrives from the from the tree to the cafeteria, and then hopefully having them spread that word to their friends and parents, and then expanding on this program this fall. We took a busload of kids last year, and we're hoping to increase that program exponentially as the years go on. So we did that with a lot of success, and the farmers were also very cooperative in providing us with some what we call point-of-sale material, which is really color brochures and posters that we were able to distribute to the Chicago Public Schools and have them post them in their cafeterias, and just kind of get the word out that that the local initiative is very much there. It's working, and these are healthy food choices and fresh choices, and in doing so, educate the kids as to where their food exactly comes from. We also encourage the schools individually to engage their local school councils, which essentially are parents and faculty, to spread the initiative and to let them know that this is progressing. And if I might take a moment, backing up to when this initiative started back in 2008, along with the objective itself in bringing local produce to the Chicago Public Schools, the purchasing commitment by Chartwell Thompson Hospitality would increase exponentially, beginning in 5% in 2008. Fast forwarding to today, where over 35% of all the total produce purchases by the Chicago Public Schools would have come from the local farms. If we can go to the next slide. And finally, just supporting local initiatives, it's just plain good business. In doing so, we support the local economies. We keep the money circulating within the radius. We support local employment, both creating new jobs and sustaining new jobs. Businesses tend to reinvest in their community, so if the businesses are thriving, the community has the potential to thrive as well. Whereas several years ago, for example, apples, right now we've been buying apples exclusively out of Michigan. Just a few short years ago, they were exclusively coming out of Washington State. So needless to say, we are reducing the carbon footprint quite a bit by less fuel emissions being emitted into the air. And then it's an opportunity for local farms to build a brand that they otherwise might not recognize that they had. By coming into a big marketplace like the Chicago Public School System, they have the opportunity to also brand themselves and brand their products to other ancillary markets, whether it be retail or even other institutional end users. And then lastly, it just allows us to better service the Chicago Public Schools. By utilizing local farmers, you're doing all these transactions, and you're conducting all this commerce at arm's length. And for us, that's good business practice, and it's good for the farmers. and ultimately it's good for the Chicago Public Schools children who they're the consumers, they're our customers, and you know, that's who we want to make happy in the end.
Great, thank you, Caesar. There are a lot of questions coming in, so we're going to have one more speaker, and then we're going to open it up for the questions. I really appreciate that. But let me just go to our third and final speaker, who is Len Neeb. Len Neeb is the sales manager at Miller Poultry as well as Pine Manor Farms. Len is as a small family-owned business it is. Len is the brother-in-law to the owner, Galen Miller. He joined the company in 1995, where with his experience now, he really understands the poultry business, and he is committed to producing natural-grown, ethically raised, wholesome, great-tasting food. Len was a key coordinator in helping bring a partnership together between Miller Poultry, Chicago Public Schools, along with other partners of Whole Foods and School Food Focus. So just to give a quick overview of why Len is here and some of the interesting pieces of this story is earlier this year, Chicago Public Schools announced that they will be purchasing 1.2 million pounds of chicken from a local farm, from Miller Farms, located in northern Illinois. It is a farm that has high ethical standards, and they raise all of their chickens without the use of antibiotics. The chicken that comes from Miller Farms is the same chicken that you would find in Whole Foods. It is the same chicken that you probably might find in Chipotle Grill. However, the legs were not being used by those two companies, but they are now being made available to Chicago Public Schools, and at a purchase of that size enables Chicago Public School students to have the option of eating this product twice a month for every student. And it's an exciting opportunity to really see how market-based change is happening through the Chicago Public Schools food program. And we hope to see that there are changes throughout the country. Having said that, Len, please take over, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Well, thanks a lot, Mark. This is really a unique opportunity for us because actually we are a very small company. And I don't know if you can recognize either one of these two brands, the Miller Poultry brand and the Pine Manor brand. And we're raised right here in the Midwest. Next slide. We're a very small company, by the way, and we're working on the third generation of a company which is practicing the small family-run small business example, where the personal integrity and the personal involvement by the owner is all the way through. It's not being swallowed up by a larger company. So to be involved with something of this nature is it's really been an opportunity for us. Next slide. Our mission statement, which you might think is kind of unusual to put in here, but actually there's a parallel. And we are a company, in fact, we read this every week at our staff meeting, of dedicated, faithful people producing naturally grown poultry in an ethical and efficient manner for consumers who appreciate and enjoy wholesome, great-tasting food. What was kind of neat about this is that this has been able to help facilitate children to experience natural foods in their basic form without further processing at least twice a month in the Chicago schools. And that's kind of been a real neat opportunity for us. And this is kind of also like the Whole Foods grocery store's philosophy is providing healthy, basic, natural foods. Next slide. This next slide is just a little bit about our company. You can just read it at your leisure there. But basically, it shows what size we are. Even with those numbers, we're less than 1% the size of Tyson. Next slide. The product that we have these are just a quick little shot of what we provide. Next slide. The way the history about how this started was rather unique, and for those who are listening, it might be some help in putting together a program like this in your school districts or things of that sort. It was unexpected. In fact, it was surprising that it ended up the way that it did. But basically, it started out with a contact from Rich Wolf, who's the Midwest Division Meat Department Director for Whole Foods. And he actually got a hold of Bob Bloomer, or Bob Bloomer got a hold of him, and Rich coordinated a visit of our operation with the Team Healthy School campaign that was headed by Bob Bloomer. And they actually came out and toured the entire operation of Met Management at Miller Poultry. And that it was important for them to understand where this was coming from, that it was truly what we said it was. And they took a real personal involvement in this whole thing from beginning to end. In fact, one of the things that we discussed over lunch while we were here is the drumsticks. Kids like them. They're easy to handle without silverware. And actually, the dark meat, in my opinion anyway, is a little more tasty. We feel we were very fortunate because we have received national recognition with this program. Our little tiny little company got national recognition. And we've been contacted by other 4 major school programs to duplicate this program with them. And to date, anyway, we had to decline for each one because of our size. Next slide. One of the magical parts of this, this picture is a student. It's very personal. It's actually Mark Bishop's son, the person putting this thing together. And he showed us this picture. Pardon me? I
didn't know you were going to use this picture ahead of time.
Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, what's unique about this is that this photo, Mark Bishop's son, Henry here, last week came home, and he told Mark that he thought the chicken at school was so delicious he ate every last drop of meat from the bone and brought the bone home for me to take a photo of. And what this is, I think this is exemplary of what children instinctively or somehow know that what they're eating is natural. It is the way that it's supposed to be rather than further processed food. Next slide. The thing about our program here is that we're vertically integrated, so that we kind of practice what we preach here, I guess, a little bit, is that what that means is we hatch, feed, manage the grow out, we have our own processing plant, and we actually, in some cases like CPS, have our own distribution. So we start with the hatchery. Next. Next. This is actually the back of the hatchery. Next slide. We have our own feed mill, which provides 100% of the feed. Next. We employ about 400 people altogether. Next. Another thing that is a little bit unusual is our sensitivity to the ecological circle. In our processing plant, we use a huge amount of water, and one of the things that we do that's maybe a little bit different from our bigger brothers in the industry is that we actually use the water to land apply the water, and we grow chicken, corn, and feed to the chicken, which is a little bit unusual in the industry. Next slide. And there's some more fun facts here. We actually have about 130, it's actually more than that, Amish farms that raise the chicken. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide again. One more. Next slide. And one more. Okay, that's the one we wanted. The thoughts about this partnership with the Chicago Public Schools is we have found there is a demand for natural and local food, which is something new kind of to the industry, and we had no idea that it would take off like this. And we're at 2 days a month right now. 2 meals will have our chicken in it. And basically it's hormone, antibiotic, byproduct-free chicken, 100% veg-fed. And it does have a different taste. I think Henry is one that can attest to that. If somebody might be interested in doing a program like this, like from other school programs, I wish I could offer a little more help, because what we do is pretty unusual in the industry of raising birds without the use of antibiotics and drugs and things of that sort. But basically, what needs to do, you need to ask questions, usually an ABF or antibiotic-free supplier. And normally it is a smaller company, and there are sometimes, I guess what you would say, handicaps because of that. But even a small company like us, a couple days a month to start the program, that's what we would suggest to do, to kind of just about mirror what we've done and how we found great success. And it has been a really cool thing for our little company. I know I've said it 2 or 3 times, but we've got literally national recognition over this, and we're just proud to be a part of this whole program. That's it.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I would actually like to add one other point. I'm going to, because speaking specifically about antibiotic-free chicken, our friends at School Food Focus put out a research paper looking at guidelines, best practices, as well as suggested language if you were interested in looking at including language in RFP in a school food program for this particular topic. So I just pushed out the link, so by all means take a look and see if this is something that can work for you. All right, it is right now 1:45. We've got bunches of questions, and we will still take more, so I would suggest that we just get started and start taking some questions. So I'm going to start with Alex, if you'd like to start seeing what's out there.
Great. Thanks, Mark. So we had quite a few questions come in. I'm just going to get it started here. The first question is for Anupama, wanting to know if there is existing age-appropriate curricula on food systems, food access, food policy, food security.
Sure, that's a great question. Yes, there is age-appropriate curriculum available for many of those topics that you've listed out, and I will name a few here and then suggest that you go to a particular web link that I can provide that has a listing of these and links to many of these. So there's quite a few. There's something called Life Lab in California that has developed an age-appropriate curriculum, or more focused on school gardens and experiential learning. There's something called Cook Shop, which is more focused on, in New York, based out of New York, which is more focused on on the food and cooking angle of it. There's from Wisconsin, the REAP program in Wisconsin has developed a lot of materials as well. Then the Center for Eco-Literacy up in Berkeley has developed resources. They have quite a few resources. There's one that's called Big Ideas, which has by grade levels and meeting curricular standards for those grades, suggestions and recommendations for activities that you can do to be engaging kids in local food systems and farm to school type activities. So there's quite a few resources available. What I would suggest is if you go to our website, farmtoschool.org, and under the resources tab, there's a sub-tab that's called curricular resources. If you click on that, there's quite a few, there's quite a big listing that you can tap into through that link.
Mm-hmm. Great, fantastic. Thank you, Anupama. And another question for you is we have a participant wondering if you could speak a little bit to the research supporting that shows academic achievement improves through farm-to-school programs. So anything on that health and learning connection that might be supported by farm-to-school programs.
Right. I mean, I think there's quite a bit of research that connects healthy eating and better learning with specific examples from farm to school. I have to say that the research is fairly limited, and I would like to see more. But some of the research that we know of farm to school programs that have documented benefits in terms of academic achievement, as well as sort of other gains in terms of learning, have come from have come from the Berkeley program in California that have documented positive gains in phonological awareness of the alphabet, better social skills, self-esteem. So that's sort of the social angle of it as well, but also actual academic learning. There are benefits, in the one that I know of right off the top of my head is the Berkeley program that has documented that. I would like to see a lot more specifically for front of school. I think there's quite a bit of literature out there that generally links healthier eating and better learning.
Great, thanks, Anupama. One question that's actually come in from multiple participants is, how do I start a farm-to-school program in my school?
Does anyone want to jump?
Yeah, any three of our participants can add input to that one.
Yes, I'd like to give some input to that. It's actually fairly easy. What I would suggest you do, regardless of the size of your school system, would be to reach out to your local Department of Agriculture. You can reach out to, if you're in the Midwest, to the folks at familyfarmed.org. You can also, I had actually some really good success just doing some Google searches for farmers in a certain radius or a certain state that had a certain commodity, and just began searching. A lot of the legwork is very simple. A lot of the work is very easy to do, and you'd be surprised at what you could find relatively simply. And a lot of times too, if you're a small school district or even just a single school, you may have a real one-on-one relationship with a local farmer who doesn't have an exorbitant amount of capacity necessarily, but certainly can service a school and or schools that maybe have several hundred children participating.
I could just jump in there and build on what's been said already. What at the Farm to School Network, what we suggest is, based on where you are approaching this interest from. So if you're a parent or a teacher or a community member, do your legwork in terms of finding out what the interest in any kind of change in the school system is. Meet with your food service director, meet with your provider, meet with farmers that might be interested, teachers that might be interested in supporting it, and community members, and nonprofits such as Family Farm here in Illinois and the Healthy Schools Campaign, and sort of try and set up a meeting of all these key stakeholder groups. Do some kind of fun activity, do a taste test or something that brings all these people together to really, feel and see what you're talking about here. And you want to serve these things to your, to the kids in the school. We also suggest, starting small. So once you've done your legwork and gotten these people together for an initial conversation, really doing an assessment of, where you are with what could be done. So, dreaming big, really you want to change the entire system, let's say, that's fine, that's a great goal. But really starting by small steps and really thinking about what's possible in your own situation. Your schools may not have any kitchens, and so what does that mean in terms of how you want to implement the program? So starting small, starting by a couple of products, or starting by one product, starting in smaller schools, starting in lesser number of schools to really get the kinks out of the system, and then moving forward. It is a collaborative approach at the local level. I think really connecting with as many people in the community as you can, and at the school level, the principal, the food service, getting the kids engaged and excited about it is great. And then one last thing I would mention is that in every state of the country, the National Farm to School Network has a state lead who is there to assist you and to guide you, not necessarily do the work for you, but really guide you with resources and how-tos to do this. And we have a lot of how-to toolkits on our website as well. So, go to our website and click on our map of the United States. You should be able to find a contact person that you can connect with who's gone through this, who knows how this works, and can help you.
Great. Thank you, Anupama. That was a really fantastic answer. We appreciate you providing that much detail. And actually, we have a question for Caesar wanting to know if Cristina Foods manages the fresh frozen vegetable program as well, and if so, if you could speak a little bit more to that.
Yes, we do also manage the fresh frozen program for Chicago Public Schools as well. Again, these commodities come from the surrounding states as well as Illinois itself, and basically these are the commodities that have application in the school lunch program, but not in their raw form. A real easy example would be fresh corn. Fresh corn comes packed 4 dozen ears to a case, and it's just not practical to bring in fresh corn into a cafeteria and have the cafeteria workers peel that corn and further process that corn. So commodities such as corn, for example, would be shipped to a processor, a fresh frozen processor, further processed down and repackaged into manageable, more easily utilized pack sizes for the schools. So those types of commodities are also menued at the Chicago Public Schools, but of course they are in frozen form. Some other commodities that come to mind that we utilize in frozen form would be zucchini, julienne zucchini, julienne yellow squash, diced carrots, kernel corn, and green beans.
Great, thank you, Cesar. One question we have, which Anupama, I'm hoping you might be able to speak to, is what barriers, if any, have the USDA lunch guidelines posed, and how might you address them?
So I'm assuming that the question is connected with the new nutrition guidelines. Is that correct?
Sorry, with the new USDA lunch guidelines that were just released earlier this year.
Okay, great. So that is a good question. I think what we're hearing from from on the ground is that the new nutrition guidelines are good in the sense that they are asking for additional amounts of fruits and vegetables to be served to school kids, and that's great. I think the barriers might be in the sense that, how does one do that? There are barriers at the school level in terms of lack of kitchen facilities, lack of, appropriate labor. Often school food service may not have the ability to process, products and serve them, appropriately, especially fruits and vegetables, which require additional prepping. So really, taking a sense of that, as well as I think keeping in mind that with the new nutrition guidelines, where there's a focus on additional fruits and vegetables, that's, from our perspective, that's sort of the major one. There's also a need to sort of figure out. I mean, I can certainly see how a barrier would be to have adequate time to eat the food. So it does take kids longer time to process in their own systems a bowl of salad versus a prepared meal that that it takes 5-10 minutes, and typically kids have 15 to 20 minutes to go through the line and eat their lunch and get done with and out of the cafeteria. With additional fruits and vegetables on the menu, I think there's probably need for sort of reviewing really how that time constraint is going to play on it, because you want the kids to be taking the products that are listed in the guidelines, but you also want them to be eating it, not dumping it in the in the garbage. And so that to me is is a major concern. I think in terms of really the guidelines are great, but how will it get implemented, and how is it actually practically going to be playing out in the schools?
Okay, great. Thank you, Nupama. We're coming up on the end of our 1 hour. We still have a number of questions that we would love to get through. But before we go, let me just ask a quick question, because I asked my speakers beforehand if they can spend a little extra time with us, to which they said yes. But let me ask the audience: would you be willing to spend a few more minutes? Do you see that? And if you can, please just take a few moments to answer the poll. All right, I've got about 10 more seconds on our poll as the answers are coming in. All right, let's finish it up and say all closed. Ready? Done. And it looks like, for the most part, few people have to run. A third of you have to run, and if you have to run, we absolutely appreciate your participation, and we understand. For the rest of you, let's stick around for about another 10 minutes and try to answer a few more questions for everyone, and then we will wrap up. So, Alex, great. What's the next question you'd like to?
Len, we have a question for you. Just wondering where Miller sells their products. specifically there's a school board member in Missouri that's interested if Miller has their products there, but just to speak a little bit about the reach of your farm.
Not too much in Missouri. Actually, the size of us is the radius of most of our sales is within about 150 miles. So a majority of our product is in the Chicago area, the Detroit area, and then we also have a pretty big market in the Cincinnati-Dayton area. But as far as moving west out of there, due to our size and distribution, that's where everything is centralized.
Great, thank you, Len. So another question we have is regarding cost of a farm-to-school program. Just saying that because education is always about balancing the budget, can a farm-to-school program save money or does it cost more?
Or actually, Caesar, do you have an insight on the additional cost for a school moving towards farm-to-school?
Well, I really haven't found that there is really any additional cost because you know, we're first and foremost distributors of fresh produce and other food products, but we're also asked by the folks at Chartwells Thompson for Chicago Public Schools to play the role of aggregator, which we are more than happy to do, not only because it's our biggest client, but also it has allowed us to penetrate other markets with, you know, with a local farm program. I think it actually saves money, if nothing else, the most obvious being the reduction in the carbon footprint. I mean, currently, freight rates out of the West Coast could be anywhere from $4.50 to $5.50, $4.50 to $5.50 per case on a load of apples, for example. So the savings right there, you can see how substantial that could be. And when you are a federally subsidized lunch program, as the Chicago Public Schools is, they're working on a very low margin of error, so to speak, in terms of the way they spend their dollars. So the farm to school program has been nothing short of a blessing in that regard. I think, and I think that would apply to any state and to any school size. If you can buy local, it's good business all around.
I would agree that sort of makes sense, and in general, what we've seen is also that the local food cost itself is not more than what the school district would be paying. I would agree. I would also add that I think the additional cost that school districts might see, especially school districts that do not necessarily have kitchen facilities or adequate labor to be working on some of these additional costs that come up with prepping local food in the form that it comes to them. If it's coming directly from a farmer, then that is additional cost that they need to be raising money for. But typically, we do not see school districts using grant money or using external money for buying for the cost of the food itself. We do not necessarily ask that school districts do that, and they don't, because it's not good business.
Great. I want to move on to a different question. Here's a question that's focused exclusively on Chicago. So Caesar or Len, you may have an interesting perspective. The question is, what are the obstacles that keep this program in Chicago from growing at a faster pace? And are there ways that we can move it forward more aggressively? So knowing that we went from 5% to 35% of our produce since 2008, and knowing, Len, that we now have your product being served twice a month, what are some of the obstacles or opportunities for expansion do you both see? Caesar, Len, either?
Yeah, Caesar here. Yeah, I can only speak to the produce side of things as it applies to this question. We will always need fruits and vegetables from outside this area just by virtue of where we're located. And by that I mean bananas will always be a staple of the school lunch program, as will fresh oranges and also fresh pears. Now, although fresh pears are grown in Michigan, we have found that most of those pears do go to canners and processing. Again, we're talking about the customer here, and that customer being a child. And as we all know, our kids eat with their eyes. So first of all, it has to be aesthetically pleasing to the eye, and again, getting back to the, just the geographic of where we are here in Illinois, Obviously, we don't grow citrus in Illinois. We don't grow bananas. So to that end, the local program probably, may never grow to that extent. But in terms of accelerating what we can grow, we are currently working on bringing in more varieties of the fresh frozen program, again, only because those types of commodities aren't really practical to bring into the schools in their raw form because of the prep time and the added labor cost that might be involved. But in terms of commodities proper, we are seeing more fresh cucumbers come into the marketplace. Last year, we introduced fresh spinach for the first time to the Chicago Public Schools from a farmer in downstate Carbondale. Mark spoke to the potato farmer we have in St. Allen, Illinois, which is less than 60 miles south of Chicago. They've made some improvements as a result of this program to their efficiencies. They put up a potato shed, so we have more Illinois potatoes for an extended period. And we're always looking. We just met several weeks ago, Bob Bloomer and myself, with a farmer from central Wisconsin who's planning on growing fresh broccoli. Again, fresh broccoli to grow in the Midwest, very limited, window of opportunity there. But nonetheless, however successful that is, that'll be something else that adds to the success of the program. So we're always looking for new commodities, new ideas, new farmers to bring to the table.
Len, do you have any perspective on the growth of this program?
Well, I would say that probably the hurdle that has to be crossed is getting a supply. And with the size of our company, and then also the vision of it, is that to manage and take care of a truly antibiotic-free program, it's difficult to get too large because it is a difficult thing to manage. So we are under the constraints of just the size of our company, number one, and that no one else in the area that we are aware of, anyway, is producing an antibiotic-free. So as far as any major growth in that area, at least in the short term, I don't see that taking any great strides forward. We might be able to go to 3 days a month or something like that, not much more than that.
Great, thank you.
Great, thanks, Len. And so we are going to take one final question. We had a question that came in, I believe, during Caesar's presentation, asking what are USDA grading certificates?
Sure. USDA grading certificates for fresh fruits and vegetables are basically a mechanism that's in place by the United States Department of Agriculture that says if you market a certain perishable commodity as a certain grade, just like we have grades in meat, prime, choice, utility, and so on, we also have those in fresh produce. For example, in the case of apples, you have a grade of what they call extra fancy, which is the most aesthetically pleasing to the eye, holds the greatest amount of pressure in terms of crunch and resilience, flavor, bricks, which is a measurement of the sugar content inside the apple. And you have that grade varying all the way down to just what they call a number one, which is a basic, all of the above, except there might be some minimal scarring, there might be some hail damage, that type of thing. All of these types of grades are approved for the consumer market, but again, it all has to do with keeping farmers in check in terms of how they market their products in terms of grade, and the USDA, by grading these products, assures us that yes, indeed, this is a U.S. number one, or yes, indeed, this is an extra fancy. And what they do when they look at when they're grading a commodity, they do allow for a certain percent of decay. I believe it's like 3% in most cases, which is very negligible. They do look at the appearance, the size, the consistency of the size, if we're talking about a certain count of apples per case. And this is a really good tool for the distributor, not only to protect himself, but also to protect his customer, and of course this case being the kids, that, what we're saying we're bringing to market, we're indeed bringing to market, and that, that everybody can consume this product with peace of mind.
And the follow-up to that is, how hard or easy is that for a grower to secure these?
The growers can secure them as well as the distributors can secure them on the grower's behalf, and that's just a matter of simply contacting the local agricultural marketing service, Fruit and Vegetable Authority, and arranging for that authority to come out to the farm and randomly grade a load of apples, let's say, as an example again, before it goes onto the truck and gets shipped out. Conversely, we as distributors can wait for that product to arrive at our dock, inspect the product using our own criteria, and then if we feel that something is not up to grade, we can then order a grading certificate here locally to make sure that that product is grading as the farmer is advertising. So in both instances, it's a very easy certificate to obtain, or a very easy service to obtain, and it usually costs anywhere between $50 and $100 per truckload to obtain a grading certificate.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think that is going to wrap up. Our time is out. I want to say thank you to everyone for participating and for being part of this. Again, we still have more webinars and more opportunities for learning in the future, so we hope and would look forward to you all joining us on other topics that we are covering, including health and learning connection, increasing support for school nurses, innovations for healthy school food, and a small business side of improving school food. There are a lot of topics for us to cover, and not all of it can be done in just 1 hour. So we hope you'll join us again. So again, thank you all so much. Thank you to the speakers for taking your time to spend with us. Thank you for the listeners and the audience members for being here with us. And we look forward to next time. Take care.